Hi everyone. I was delayed on the motorway, so I actually played football this morning and then I had 7 minutes to get ready. So
I think that's very impressive.
hopefully I look okay. Haven't ironed my trousers, but
Yeah, no, nobody could tell. Nobody could tell at all. I know everyone in the room is very excited to have somebody like Jill with us today. I'm going to, try and keep us on track with time. So I'll probably stop quite early to ask if you have any questions, because I'm imagining there will be an awful lot of them. So if you don't mind, we'll do a quick sort of question and answer with Jill now, and then I'll open it up to the floor, and then probably just sort of finish with a couple of questions again at the end. But I think that's probably the best way when there's so much, clearly, excitement in the room with a number of phones that are out taking photos of Jill. And again, I think this room probably knows an awful lot about your football career. So I want to sort of dot around and maybe not do everything in chronological order, but particularly find out about challenges since the last couple of years, I guess, really. But first of all, can we go back to the very beginning? Because again, if you look around the room, it's quite young. And a lot of people here maybe don't know what it was like at the beginning, both as a child and that Sunderland-Everton, that first start, and what you had to do to really get into football at that point.
yeah, I think obviously speaking about it a lot, I'm sure there's people in the room who had the challenges where you were the only girl playing football. And I think as I've went around and spoke the last year, trying to make a bit of money, I think my story, I kind of remember different bits. And I probably think when I was younger that I was being strong by kind of not showing how I was feeling in the moment. So walking past boys and I'd be like, oh, they're going to just say, you're a boy because you play football. But how it really made us feel inside was pretty bad. But I never went home, never told anyone, nothing, because I thought it was going to be a weakness to share that. And I was thinking back, actually, my first day of senior school, which is pretty daunting anyway, a boy did actually call us a name for playing football. And I think that resilient, determined Jill, who'd had all this grief since she was 7, 8, 9-year-old, I decided to chase after him. And he tripped us up and I smashed my arm in like 3 places. So my first day of senior school, when I think about it, was spent in hospital due to playing football. And I think, not that this is a sob story, but I do think now that there's going to be a girl starting senior school who's not going to have that experience. And I think that's kind of, when you speak about the journey, that's what makes all them moments worthwhile. And I do see him now in the pub and I'm tempted to 2-foot him. Well, I haven't yet. No, yeah, he's kind of been like, well done on the Euros, and I'm like, thank you. But, yeah. I won't mention his name. Maybe one day.
Oh, yeah, the books.
Yeah.
You mentioned there that there was nobody that you wanted to open up to. Mm-hmm. That, I think, the conversation we've had over the last 2 days shows that how much that has changed. Who are the people that you go to now for career advice, and particularly that switch of leaving football behind and not necessarily knowing what was next? Who were the people that you could go to for advice at that point?
Yeah, I think I'm still quite, when I'm at home and stuff like that, I don't think I share too much. I get asked a lot, are you okay? You okay? How's work? Yeah, it's fine. So I'm actually not that good at doing it, really, and I think that probably comes from being younger, and I think that's why it's good that times have changing, because if you've never opened up and spoke about things, it's really hard to then become that person that does that. And back in the day with sport, it was a lot of, right, if you substitute for this game, make sure you wear your face in the right way. So you'd be like crying inside, but like just pretend, because it was seen as a weakness. So yeah, I wouldn't sit here and say that, take my earring out. Okay, sorry. I got told to take my earrings out, so yeah.
This is part of the very quick change that you've had to do to get here.
I'll look like a pirate.
It's just, the microphone knocks against it.
But yeah, I think it's kind of one of them that if you've never been used to doing it. But yeah, my agency now take on a lot of my diary and my work and keep us organised. And I think if I had something that I probably had to speak about, I'd probably go and speak to them, I think. But as long as you've got someone, I like to kind of keep home life and work life a little bit separate, else you can get into that stage where you're just talking about work 24/7. So yeah, I hope this isn't getting recorded.
Yeah. But home life, work life, keeping that separate is one thing. Doing I'm a Celebrity and winning I'm a Celebrity is a whole other thing. In terms of who you spoke to about that opportunity and what it might mean and what doors it might open? Or was that not even part of the conversation when you were thinking about it?
No, that was never the reason for doing it. I think I retired, then I got the opportunity and I was like, oh, well, I'm not doing anything else. Went into it like very naive, really. I am someone that just thinks to the next day. And again, I'm not saying that's a strength, but it kind of just, if I think, oh my God, I've got like 4 weeks of all this stuff going on, I can get really overwhelmed and stuff like that. So I try to just break it down to each day. But I suppose when you're heading into a jungle and you're suddenly going to be missing for like, we did 2 weeks isolation, then 3 weeks in there, so you're going to be missing for 5 weeks. I remember when I got out, people were like, I was only talking to you yesterday and you didn't say anything, but you had to keep it quite secretive. But then again, I think if I'd spoke to a lot of people, they might have said, don't do it, and kind of clouded my judgment on it. So yeah, I do kind of just like to think of it day by day, and I didn't go into it thinking, oh my God, I might get paid for this. By the way, whatever they said I got paid, I did not get paid that. I read it in the paper the other day and I was like, I think I got about 5% of that. So I never did it for the money or anything like that. It was just to kind of do something, I suppose. And then, yeah, had a lot of opportunities to go to groups and speak to people. And as I say, if you can kind of help people in any way, then I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and we just heard from Rachel and various others over the last couple of days that are former players that went into punditry. You did give that a go. Did you know what you wanted to do straight away after football, or was it just a case of trying a few different things?
Yeah, I still don't know now, to be honest. Obviously, Rachel Brown-Finnis is one of my best friends, and this is the first time I realised that she was here. I was like, we'll get a coffee tomorrow. But for me, I say Brownie, but she was always my role model growing up. I was 18, joining Everton. She was a little bit older. And I think them years, 18, 19, 20, 21, are the years that really kind of shape your personality, your morals, your values. And when I was listening to her speak then, I'm like, she was the first person that taught me kind of keep your energy for the things that matter. And that's something that stayed with us throughout my career. So I think it's important about who you surround yourself with. I've completely forgot the question that you asked because I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. But
no, it's just the idea of trying lots of different things, including punditry, which maybe wasn't something you necessarily wanted to go into.
Yeah, I think even now I don't know what I want to do, really. I've tried, as you say, a few different things. I've got the men's games coming up. I do like talking, as you can probably tell, but I did a football session this morning and I'm definitely at my happiest when I'm on the grass, like just even a little bit of coaching or playing football. So yeah, I suppose it's just all about opportunity, and what I am really enjoying is I was used to this routine every single day, football, training, games on a weekend, and I quite like that. I can wake up and be like, oh, what we're doing this week. So yeah, I think I always think just take the opportunity, and then if you don't get it the next year, at least you did it, you tried it, and you enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm kind of in a very fortunate position that I'm doing everything that I enjoy doing, really.
Even that is a positive mindset, though, because I speak to a lot of athletes and sports people who are approaching retirement or just after retirement, and they often say it's the scariest decision they've ever had to make, and it's quite overwhelming to decide when to do that. What was that decision-making process for you?
Because I don't think too far ahead, I always describe it a bit of like you can kind of just finish a relationship there and then, or you can be breaking up for a while. And I feel like we're going through a little bit of a breakup period. So my last couple of years in football, I had good moments, but I also had some that weren't too good. So yeah, I think when that moment happened, it was kind of like, look, we've won the Euros. I remember Kira Walsh going, "You'll be retiring, won't you?" And I was like, God, I better now, because they'll think I'm just hanging around. But yeah, it's kind of scary to say that I've really enjoyed it. It's been really fun. It's been good. But then at the same time, when I look back on my career, like honestly, I just feel so lucky, really. And I don't say this to get sympathy, but I was an average player. But I know that I'd work hard. I wouldn't leave a stone unturned. I'd do every single extra run that I had to do. And when I look back, not a lot of people get the perfect ending, especially in sport. So I just feel so lucky that I think, how can I not look back and smile? So yeah, this is a little bit of the unknown, but I think we'll probably talk about it in a bit. But I think if you kind of always try and be honest with yourself. And I see it as like building a house sometimes. Throughout my football career, sometimes there's a manager or a manager in work that just goes, oh, I like them, and they put them up there. But sometimes when that happens, they can easily do that as well. So I think throughout my career, I've kept trying to be honest, that you build these strong foundations that are definitely through things like might be success with a team, things that you've actually done. And then I think if you do have a bad day, you don't fall all the way through the cracks, and that's kind of how I see it. So build these strong foundations, and if an opportunity happens and it's taken away from you, hopefully there'll be something else to move on to. So that's kind of the motto I've adopted over the years, but it's taken a bit of time, and hopefully it's built on hard work.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for the conversations that we've been having about there. A lot of the people that have been on the stage have said there isn't really a career path necessarily for a lot of women following these kind of sports and football. And so you are doing that. You build the foundations and then make sure that you can get the rest of your life in balance with that. And then you've always got those to fall back on.
Yeah.
How much of that is potentially... I know you have this finding your formula part of you. Can you explain a little bit of that to people who don't necessarily know about it, and how much is that about the formation of everything?
I think this was a conversation that I shared with Jennifer Beattie over a glass of wine, and then I think she went and put it on social media, and I was like, did I say that? But yeah, I think finding your formula, it's kind of just something throughout my career where basically I would always judge myself by, I think people always see this kind of fun, having a laugh type Jill, but when it come to like work and football, I was very serious. It was like when I crossed over that white line, you might have seen at Wembley when I said some swear word, but I was very, very passionate. And basically, I would always be quite harsh on myself, say, after a game on a Sunday. So it was always about, I always think you can have so many different types of people in the room. And if you look at the cars in the car park, you go and put diesel in all of them, only 30% will move because some are electric, some are petrol. And you have to work out how you can achieve your dreams, but it's not like two people need to get there the same way. So when I sometimes talk, I speak about me and Steph Houghton a lot because our careers were very similar, but we are two completely different people. Like, she would finish a game, she'd analyse everything. I'd just be like, I know what I did well, know what I didn't, and go. And then I could still tell you now what she has for a pre-match meal. I would just eat whatever was available. So it's kind of like, I think you have to work out what's going to work best for you, because I know if I try to be like her and she tried to be like me, we probably wouldn't have got the success. But with that, there has to be a lot of self-evaluation. So on a Sunday, I don't have a good game, I would review my week and go, should I have went to Nando's on Thursday? Should I have stayed out late on Monday? And it was constantly like how I can be better. And also, if you do have a good week at work, you do have a good month, like, why was that? I felt better in myself. And so I was constantly trying to work out this formula of what worked well for me. So that's where that came from over... I think I'll have been the only one that had a drink because obviously Beats is still playing. But she said that she found it really interesting because sometimes we try and treat everybody the same and say, well, they're doing this extra work, you should be, but you have to work out what gets the best out of you.
You're also quite a messy person outside of football.
Yes, I'm very untidy, yeah.
I find that quite interesting because I would imagine that you're quite sort of this, particularly in the way that you speak, but how do those two sides come together?
Yeah, I think it's probably things that I don't really find like they mean a lot to us, so I can be quite untidy at home. I'll leave my cup on the side or forget to pick up some clothes or something like that. But I think when it comes to, it's funny you say that actually, because I was just getting, where was it? This morning I was getting out of an Uber and I'd had a coffee and I'd put it in the side and I had my suitcase, my bag and something else. And I was like, Jill, I've got to pick that coffee cup up and put it in the bin. I was thinking, oh, I'm not going to have a day in my head that I want to, and it was just something so little like that. And I read something, which I haven't adopted this method yet, but it was like, make your bed on a morning, because that's the first thing you do on a morning, and it's going to set you up for a tidy day. So yeah, it's weird, because if I'd been in the house, I would have left the coffee cup. But I think when it came to football, our first manager, Nick Cushion at Man City, used to say all the bottles on the side of the pitch keep them. If there was any fell down, I'd go and I'd pick them up, and because he was like tidy off the pitch, tidy on the pitch. So yeah, I don't really know where that came from, but I think it's all about standards. I think it is all about standards. We used to do, I'm into like all the off the pitch stuff and everything, and it was like your lowest standard you're willing to walk past will be your standard for the day, and that always stuck in my mind really. Like, if someone's being untidy, can you tell them? Because that's got to be your team values, your morals, and everybody has to stick to it. And it might be something so little like someone's left a bit of kit, but I think all that stuff adds up to good performance.
You talked about off the pitch just then, in terms of the coffee shop that you have and the podcast and the number of different things that you've done outside of football. How much do you enjoy having those things, and particularly when you were still playing football, just having a bit of a release, something to not think about football while you're doing it?
Yeah, I think it was really important for me when Rachel was speaking before. Obviously, we were never full-time athletes, so I used to drive back to Sunderland, do my job, which was coaching at a college, and then I used to have to try and leave early. I'd get in so much trouble, and I was only trying to get back on the M62 and make it in time for training. So I think I was just always used to that way of life, and I'm not really someone who sits still. I don't really watch movies and stuff like that, because I always think, like, how can I utilise my time? And even the agency that I'm with, they said to us over Christmas, right, we're going to give you 4 weeks off. I was like, brilliant, I need it. Got 2 weeks in, and I was like ringing them, like, I need to get back to work, I need to have a purpose, I need to do something. So having the coffee shop, the soccer camps, when professional, I was like, wow, this is brilliant. You could finish at 2 o'clock, so I'd maybe go and do some coaching, or I'd sometimes would start at 10, 11, so I could go and open the coffee shop. But for me, I love meeting people. Like, I get my energy from people. So the more people I can see in a day, which drives Shelley, my partner, insane. Like, you're on holiday, I'm like, I just want to meet people. But I think, like, that's where I get my energy. So if I can go to bed at night and think, oh, you know what, I did 3-4 things today, I just feel like it was worth it.
Are those 3-4 things that you feel comfortable with always, or do you push yourself to do things that you don't feel comfortable with? Because again, that's a big conversation of people saying, well, I'm not necessarily sure that I want to do this or that I can do this.
Yeah.
But everyone on stage is saying, just give it a go, or push yourself a little bit, or just try things.
Yeah, it can be pretty daunting. Definitely when I stepped out of football and you're suddenly given these opportunities, and you're stepping into a man's world sometimes in some of it, and you know you're going to get a lot of stick. Maybe it's a punditry. Doing the England men's games, you get a lot of stick. We all know what gets said, but I think sometimes I feel like I have to have them hits of feeling uncomfortable, else I'm not going to grow and you're not going to realise your potential. And it might be you do something you don't do well, get a bit of feedback, but I've always thought about, there's a few people, sometimes I'll do something and so I'll have a conversation with someone that's like really negative, and I'll go away and I'll think, why did they think they'd just speak about negative stuff to us? We didn't get anywhere. It wasn't any feedback or anything like that. So I think sometimes you have to find your comfort in the uncomfortable. So for me, I know my people, I know who I need to speak to. If I do the punditry, I'll always speak to, say, Karen Carney or something like that, because she's been doing it for a lot longer than me, get a little bit of feedback. So I think it's okay to feel uncomfortable, definitely, and it can give you a bit of anxiety because you're stepping into new things, but if you don't try it, you could be this person who just sits in the comfort zone, doesn't push themselves, kind of, life's the same all the time, but you'll watch someone else go and do it, and you'll always be left wondering, I wonder if I could do that. So, yeah, I think being uncomfortable is kind of something that I think you have to do. And eventually, I heard Lydia say that these panels might not exist in the future, but by you being uncomfortable and maybe being visible so that young girls or girls can see that you can work in certain areas and give them a dream that exists, then I think you're just making it better for that next generation. And I think if I can take being uncomfortable so the next person isn't, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, it's a really important point, and something that I think everyone would appreciate, that the generations that are trying to make it better for the generations that are coming next. One of the things that I've seen you do, because I was at Buckingham Palace at the same time as you last year, doing the Gold Duke of Edinburgh Awards, handing them out, and you were up on the big...
Yes, I didn't realise it was going to be so big. I got
it was very
told
big, yeah.
I was going in a room of 20 people to present
There were about
awards,
3,000 people there.
and there was was it Prince Edward?
Yes,
Introduced us, this big mic, and just thousands. I was like, no, I hadn't prepared for that.
Oh, well, you were brilliant.
Yeah.
There were about 3,000 people. But it is that, what are the questions that young people are always asking you at those kind of events? Because you gave, again, a great speech about being comfortable and being uncomfortable and resilience, which are all things that award is trying to persuade people to try and do.
Yeah. Yeah, you do get asked a lot about it, and it's hard, isn't it? Because if suddenly somebody just comes up with you and you need to be more determined, you need to be resilient, like, what does it even mean? We're going to spend hours of our life writing words down on flip chart paper and stuff like that, but suddenly, I'm sorry if you do that in your just killed everybody's work. but I think, like, suddenly you think, well, why do I have belief this year and I didn't have it last year? And suddenly you did something, and you're like, and I always believe we won the Euros 2022 because we beat Germany earlier that year in the Arnold Clark Cup, if I'm being correct. So when we got here, I was like, we're just going to do something that we've already done. So it's kind of like you've got to make them words like come alive, because we can all say, yeah, I'm determined, yeah, I'm resilient, but what does it actually mean? So yeah, I just tell people the more experiences they get, the more of these words that they're going to bring alive, and they're going to add them to the armour, really. But women in football, we all get faced with daily challenges, not just in football, but I think we do have to be pretty thick-skinned, but I think we just have to keep going. I just did an interview before, and I think, like, sometimes you stand in front of the camera, you're about to go live, and you think, oh, I'm just by myself. But when you're here now, you feel like we're one big family, and even though there might be this one person out there who's being so negative, there's so many that are being so positive. And I do think social media does make us laugh sometimes. I'm like, I have never had, it could happen today, someone come up to us face to face and be negative or say anything. But yeah, I can log onto this computer and see a lot of negative messages. So I think, why don't we just all live in our own little reality and everything is fine? So, and I do think as well, we tend to add fuel to that kind of one negative thing, whereas there's so many positive things going on as well. So I think when you're talking about things, just make sure that you're not adding fuel to the negativity. Concentrate on what's positive and everything else, because people can say, oh, women shouldn't be doing this, women shouldn't be doing that, but there's a lot more people saying women should be doing that. So let's try and shift our mindset to the positives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a lot of, again, the conversations that have been happening over the last couple of days. It's important to reiterate those points from somebody like Jill. If the microphones are around, I'm sure there are lots of questions. So let's just try and get to that point as well early on. I'll let them do that and just chat to you a little bit about, you mentioned the beginning of contracts, or the sort of financial changes that happened early on in your career. Did you know it was such a groundbreaking moment when, 2009 I think it was, the contracted players, 17 of them, that was happening, and how much of a difference that could make to your life?
Yeah, it made a massive difference. I think we were awarded a contract of £16,000. So that's what I'm saying. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm not just saying it because Rachel's here, but the girls that I played with, Rachel, Lindsay Johnson, Jodie Handley, obviously Farah was a little bit younger, but I remember being on the bus and we'd be getting back early hours of the morning on a Sunday, and these girls were getting up at 6 o'clock to go and lecture. And I was like, and they probably never benefited fully. And then obviously these contracts came into place, and we used to be able to do extra sessions together. And we were just so happy. We were so happy for that extra hour on the grass together, because we knew we wanted to improve. And I think that's why it's never been about the money. Like, I never went into football thinking, oh, what money can we get out of this? And it's never been about that, and that's what I think I love about women's football. But it did make a massive difference for me. I could then live off that money. I didn't have to travel to Sunderland and back to Liverpool. I could eat a little bit better. It wasn't just them Dairy Lunchables at the service station.
Nice.
So I was, honestly, every single week I was ill because I was underfueled, I was dehydrated, because I was just working kind of so hard. So them contracts made such a difference, and the FA really, really did help. And I think it came because 2009 we played Germany in the final of the Euros and we got absolutely battered, like 6-2. And I remember people saying, well, they're full-time professionals. And I think it was a moment of realization. If we're going to compete at this level, this is what we're going to have to do. And then that's why it's such a special moment. I still get goosebumps now. But what is it, 2009? My maths is rubbish. 13 years later, exact same final, and we win. But that chunk in the middle is so much support and people fighting in the background. But yeah, them contracts were the start of it, really, I would say.
Yeah, and we started the day with David Dean talking about the fact that the first female £1 million player is probably not that far away as well. So it has come a long way, which is good. Right.
Who is it? I'll ask them for a bank transfer.
Yeah. I don't think it's too far away. Okay, if you've got a question, let's. I definitely want to make sure we get from around the room. I thought I saw a hand up. Yes, sorry, Nate, over there.
Just picking up on what you said there, Jill, about the change in the psychology and money when it comes involved, because I can tell you from a disability standpoint, our teams weren't funded, and controversial countries, but the Ukrainians and the Russians, they were fully funded as well, and they were always winning the Paralympic gold medal. So when contracts come into it, and then you start, negotiating and being around that table, like what's that change of psychology like?
I think it was just making things easier, really. So, as I say, I had to work 176 miles because I remember my expense form from where I was playing football. So it just meant that I didn't have to do that. I could then get more sleep. I could look after my nutrition a lot better. And I think it was a case of how it was always how football was going to fit into life, but it became about how life was going to fit into football. Football did become our life, but that's what we always wanted, to be professional athletes. So yeah, it's definitely, this is why I feel lucky, because I feel like I lived through kind of every stage of it up until that last part. And I remember signing for Manchester City 2013, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I get up, I go training, I have my lunch, the kit's washed, like I could just relax on a night, and I was just so happy to be a professional footballer. And yeah, I wasn't making a lot of money, at all, but I kind of didn't need to as well. Like, we got our accommodation, and yeah, so I just think the introduction of money in that sense, when I speak about it just made everything a bit easier. And then with that, again, when you're talking about energy and what you put your energy into, you had a lot more energy for the performances on the pitch and your training, which is ultimately what matters when you want to get results. So yeah, it was a great moment, really good moment.
Yeah, you mentioned living through all those different stages. What would you like to see happen in the next 5 to 10 years with women's football?
That's a good question. I think, you know what, I think sometimes it's nice to pause and reflect, and I think when we're seeing 50,000 at the WSL matches, that is just incredible. There'd usually be about 150, and you'd recognise half of them because there were family, there's a man with the dog, there was someone who would collect the balls as they went over their house. So I think now to think there's 50,000 whenever you open it up to the main stadiums, not the men's stadium, when you open it up, and I think that is great. So I think, yeah, we need to make sure that there's more teams doing that. At the minute, we're seeing kind of the top-end clubs. But as I said before, you've got to have a strong foundation. So yeah, I think we're definitely heading in the right direction, and just keep going, really. I think, yeah, there's been so much change. We all have to keep pushing, but I think the future's definitely going to be bright. Sound like an orange mobile advert. But future's bright, future's orange.
What do you want to challenge yourself to do?
Good question. I haven't got anything in my mind. I've quite liked, obviously, I've been doing a bit of a podcast with some of the male players, and I've really liked the challenge of breaking into that space, because the guys are brilliant, they're incredible, so supportive, they've helped us a lot, and I quite like the challenge of that, because I know there is people out there who's like, how can you relate to their stories? They're telling it, but you can. It's just football. They speak about getting dropped for a game, they speak about going to a tournament. It's exactly the same thing. So I quite like annoying people on social media, if I'm being honest. If I have some messages, like, as if I've annoyed people, I feel like I'm challenging something. So, yeah, I think breaking into them spaces. Even League of Their Own, I know it's sport and it's comedy, but I think we can use comedy sometimes to highlight things, because you can kind of, when people say, oh, you're only there to tick boxes, you can kind of get it in before they get it in. So sometimes when I sit down for the overlap, I go, I'm only here to tick a box, but I'm here. So I think I quite like that sport and comedy kind of genre that I've fell into. So yeah, just whatever opportunities come up, kind of, you've got to keep working, I suppose.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, any other questions from the room? Yeah, there's one just over here.
I'll be able to
Thanks.
hear you laughing. Go on.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's just coming.
Hi, Jill.
Hello.
Thank you so much. So nice to hear you talking. I just wanted to pick up actually on what you literally just said a few minutes ago, which is men's stadiums instead of men's.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a real believer I think the language around football is so important. I always try and say, like, Arsenal are my team, and said to people today, oh, I went to see Arsenal, but I always say Arsenal men. I've stopped saying, oh, I went to see Arsenal last night, I went to see Arsenal men. I went to see, you know, and even like Google, when I Google fixtures now, whether it doesn't need to be Arsenal, any fixtures, I always put in like England men fixtures, because to try and change that. How important do you think that is? And also, how do you, I mean, I think it's really important for young men and men even at my age and older to start doing it as well, especially in the game, big names in the game. How important do you think that is? And how do we...
I think it's so important, and it doesn't have to be. I think there's a lot of language nowadays, and sometimes I'm guilty of doing it, and obviously I live in different spaces that some people don't. So I think sometimes if we hear something, I think, again, like sometimes I'll use comedy just to pick up on something. I remember in the jungle when one of the guys was in charge of assigning tasks, and he was like, we need some big, strong men to carry this water, because water's heavy. And I was like, well, me and Scarlett can do it, you know, like, we're strong as well. And then I could see the shift in his mind that, yeah, like, one of yous can do it. So I think you have to make sure, if you don't stand for anything, I feel like you'll fall for everything. And it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, you've just used this language. I think sometimes you say something and it just makes people start to think a little bit differently. But yeah, that came about because I said, oh, the Arsenal game's at the men's stadium, and someone said to me, it's the main stadium. So now I'll think about what I say. So yeah, I always think there should be, I have this mad mind sometimes of like creative things. And I remember when I said that about Arsenal, and I'm like, they need to have Man Stadium. And then Leah Williamson comes along and goes, just add I, and then it's main. Puts herself there. And that's a great one. So I think that's my idea for if everything fails, I'm going to go into
advertising. Yeah, definitely.
But it is true. Like we do say like wrong things sometimes, don't we? Like I think I was chatting to a guy the other day, and I was like, oh, so have you got a wife? And then I quickly went, or a partner, and like obviously I've got a female partner, so I think it's like sometimes you just have to, So yeah, I think just constantly, just if you tell people, I think it does change people's mindset. So yeah,
that was again something, I don't know how many people in the room knew what Title IX was, which was something that David Dean mentioned this morning, but that is from I think the 70s. Billie Jean King was very much part of that, and it was a law change in America, which meant that you, as he explained this morning, you had to have the same entitlement of physical education for boys and for girls. And that came in 40, 50 years ago in America. And then Billie Jean King was also instrumental in doing exactly what you just said, saying men's basketball, women's basketball, men's football, women's football, and that became the language in broadcast. And that has never changed in America, whereas it seems like it's a fairly slow process in this country to get people to say men's when it comes to sport. And Google are also changing their algorithms, so it doesn't necessarily come up with men's things first. That's something they are looking at doing, which makes quite a lot of difference, I think, hopefully, eventually.
It is true, though, because we get a lot of young girls and young boys in the coffee shop, and they'll say, I support Man United men, but Man City women. And I think when I speak to them, I think a lot of people in the female game, I was having this conversation yesterday with a 7-year-old, but I was saying that like, I was speaking to them over the hot chocolate, and I was going, so you support Man United men? Like, yeah, but I love the Lionesses, so when Lauren Hemp and Chloe Kelly's playing, I want to watch them and support them. And I was like, I do think that's what it's like in the women's game. Like, we'll support players more so than kind of the team sometimes. So I think that's great, because that shows the work that the Lionesses are doing in kind of, if someone's choosing to follow them, as soon as they play for the club team, they're not going to go, oh, I hate you. Like, they still like them. So, yeah, it's just a friendly atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Jackie?
Pick up on,
Hi, Jackie.
sorry. Hi,
You
hi,
okay?
Jill. Can I just quickly pick up on Ruby Malone here's brilliant question about language, and it's just little things that we can tweak, isn't it? So, for example, it was always the World Cup, and it's still the FIFA World Cup, but it's the FIFA Women's World Cup. It's the Euros, it's UEFA European Championship and UEFA Women's Championship. So the default setting is still the men's game. Do you think it would just be helpful if, in a few years' time, when they're planning the next World Cups, men's and women's, that they just insert the word men's instead of taking out women's because it's too confusing, like they have with rugby? It's one option. It's a nice idea, I think. But in terms of just specifying UEFA Men's World Cup, FIFA Men's World Cup, etc. So default is not always men's football, little things like that.
Yeah. And it seems so easy, doesn't it? Especially when you say it like that. It's just insert a word. So, yeah, and I think it's until them things are said, some people just haven't thought about it. But all your presenting work, just keep inserting it, and people will definitely listen to what you say. So
I think that is important, though. The cricket has tried to do that. The ECB and the ICC have tried to make sure that it is always Men's Cricket World Cup, Women's Cricket World Cup. But interestingly, I was told off doing Radio 4 the other day by somebody when I said Men's Ashes, because they went, it's not the Men's Ashes, it's the Ashes. It's been there for over a century. But the Men's Ashes and Women's Ashes are being played at the same time. So in order to differentiate for a larger audience who don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, then I needed to say that. So I thought it was quite interesting that somebody within the BBC told me off about doing it. But anyway, any other questions? Just over here, microphone, please. Thank you.
Hi, Jill. Thank
Hello.
you for your insights. They've been really, so amazing to hear. You've obviously had the benefit of seeing the game, all through the different stages of it being the height of success that it is now and still further to go. But were there any points at which you thought, do you know what, this isn't going to get to that point, I'm really frustrated? And how did you keep that mentality going and yourself going to get to that point where you're like, actually, I want to stick with this, it's going to go somewhere?
Yeah, I don't think I really got frustrated because I just loved playing football. So I was never thinking, I didn't care if there was 200 people there or if there was 50,000 people there. I was like, once I crossed over that white line, we were just playing football, and I just loved the game of football. So I don't think in the moment there was a lot of frustrations. I think there was maybe around the time of 2009 when we had that big defeat, and then I heard that these players were obviously full-time, and I'm like, well, how the hell were we going to win? So I think there was probably a little bit about that. But in terms of, I was talking to Carly Telford the other day about when we used to play for Sunderland, and I remember the guys would be training during the day, and then we'd get put on a pitch. There was no lights, couldn't even get the footballs out. You had to run in the bushes if you needed the toilet. But do you know what? I still loved it. We did 12-minute runs around the pitch. We had to go to a car park and use the lines to do shuttles. But I just loved that sense of being part of a team and seeing us all doing that. It wasn't frustrating, oh, I can't play football or anything like that. I think it was just the sense of that being together. And that's why I always say about sport to parents, I'm like, yeah, it's been the biggest honour of my life, and the Euros will be the best day of my life, even if I go on to have kids. Please delete that. But I think it's been the best thing ever. But if your child doesn't go on to play for England, there's so much sport can teach them, winning and losing. You win and lose every single day in life. I learned to do that when I was 5, 6 years old. Obviously making friends, how to be part of something. So yeah, I always say just put them into sport, get them off the iPads, get them off the phones, get some fresh air. So yeah, I think it's just so important. So I probably didn't have too many frustrations, and maybe I'm not saying it's always a positive, but I had that day-to-day mindset, and I just loved what I was doing. So yeah, probably more frustrations. I think sometimes when you step back from it and you think, okay, that should be equal, but then I've stepped back at a time where, yeah, there's a long way to go, but there's a lot more equality. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's also a sort of round way of finishing the chat, because I know there's something you're about to do, which is very special. And you may have seen a few footballers arriving at the left-hand side of the stage. I think, Jill, you're going to kick them into the audience, if that's all right. They are signed.
This could go anywhere.
These are signed footballs by Jill, so get ready to catch.
This isn't a very... Should I throw?
Yeah, yes, probably safer.
I might throw, right. Who can catch? She nearly knocked someone
Signed
out.
footballs, by the way.
Ready? I'm not kicking.
Yeah.
Go. Right.
Good
We're going
interception.
further back.
Yeah.
You ready?
Oh, good catch. 2 more.
Anyone want a ball? There we go. Go on.
Oh, one on the front row.
I'm getting booze now. Ready?
Never.
you go.
Thank you very much, Jill
There you go.
Scott.
Right, we can
Don't forget those.
take my
Yes.
earrings. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.